I hope everybody is online now. Before I start, let me check. Swala, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Swala says it's not easy, but I'm telling him that CIT.
Sir, I'm online. I'm online.
Okay. So CIT is not an easy course, so don't worry about it. So you'll be fine. So, Fred, are you online?
Online.
Okay.
Online.
So we started looking at the constitutional provisions on oil and gas. We said that we were going to consider constitutional provision on natural resources. We said we are going to focus only on oil and gas. There are other natural resources. That one we are not going to concern ourselves with it because our syllable requires us to learn only oil and gas. So forestry is a natural resource. We are not going to look at that one. So ours is just oil and gas and other minerals. That's what we are going to look at. We said that the Constitution makes provision that any natural resource that you want to exploit in Ghana, you have to receive parliamentary approval because the resources under the ground are for the Republic and they are supposed to be held in trust for the Republic. Then we look at the revenue from the natural resources. And here, because we have narrowed down, we said when we talk about natural resources, we are going to talk about oil, gas, and minerals operation. Okay, these three things. So we look at the various revenues. These various revenues, you need to understand the various sources of revenue. It is important that you go back and look at them. Then we said that after looking at the revenue, how do we manage them? So we talked about the management of the revenue. So we discussed in detail the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, Act 815. This law is so important.
Sir, we can't see your screen.
Oh, really? My apologies. Apologetic. Can you see now? Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, it's okay now.
Okay. So we look at the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, and we are saying that this act, you need to understand it. It was amended in 2015. So anytime you are reading the 2011 version, look for the amendments. It will be important to finish reading all because the question keeps coming. For your exams, section 1 to 19, 20, 25 or 26 is important. Then you continue from 41 to 56 or so. Read everything, but pay attention to the provisions in section 1 to 26, especially from section 1 to 18 or 19. Note the various funds. The various funds, how the funds receive their income, and then how the disbursement is done. Okay, you are supposed to note everything about the annual budget funding. Annual budget funding amounts. Note it, and then the uses of the annual budget funding, the formula. Okay, and then look at the reports that the Ministry of Finance always submit to Parliament. Here we say you should go to the Ministry of Finance website and look at them. So these are the reports I'm expecting you to know under the management of the. So the first one was just the introduction. The second major topic we treated was this, the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Look at PIAC, the Public Interest and Accountability, and review their reports. Review their reports. What are their findings and their recommendations? Okay. So in looking at all the funds, please pay attention to the Heritage Fund. Okay. The Heritage Funds versus free SHS. Should we use the Heritage Fund to fund the free SHS? If you agree, why? If you disagree, why not? Okay, so look at all those ones. Then I think the next major topic we treated is also I think we treated the special industry, and we look at the capital allowance. So here we look at section 63 to 70. So we treated capital allowance. And again, I must say that in the exams, we said you'll be answering 5 questions. 1 will certainly, or 2 will certainly be on the Act 815. Okay. And then there's always 1 calculation, which is on capital allowance and distribution of oil, distribution of crude oil. If you check the past questions, you will see them there. Okay, so we've done the capital allowance. So this calculation is very, very important. The capital allowance, we look at the test schedule of 896. Okay. Then what again did we do? And then I think we have look at unitization and redetermination. So here we read section 34 and 35 of the Petroleum Exploration and Production Rights, Production Act. Okay, 2016 Acts 919. We look at all those ones, and that was, and then we look at the fiscal regime. That was the last topic. Regime, where we look at the royalty stroke tax, and then we look at the production sharing agreement, the service contract, and all those ones. We'll look at all those ones. So I think that is where we are now. Is anybody having any special question relating to what we have done so far? Today, I may not treat new topic. I brought up, I sent you a question for us to analyze. Did you receive it in the night? I know some of you might have been sleeping by then, but I'm sure when you woke up, you read it. How many of you read it? Lou? Swala?
Yeah, Francis, I saw it.
You saw it? Okay. So, who else? Swala's, Rosemary says she saw it. Who else?
I saw it this morning.
Okay, this morning. Rosalind, I'm not hearing from you. Rosalind, what's the matter? Are you there?
Yeah, I was in town for the first class, so I didn't
Wow.
want.
You were shopping.
How we for do am?
Are you going to prepare your love like Redeemer has been doing?
No, fufu.
Fufu ish. Please, how
Hey.
many are we on this class? We'll finish. We'll just go and take our fufu, and for social distancing, we'll not sit over there. We'll just sit
You
in
should
our
just,
class.
she just do takeaway. We'll bring it home.
Yes, she'll do takeaway. Do the fufu in the takeaway rubber, and then the soup in the banku rubber. When we get there, we'll take it
Pass
away.
a party.
We'll take and then go. So that's why we're not hearing from you. But I believe you join and you listen, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So now that you are home, you have to contribute. So we'll be hearing from you how it's going. And then we have to pass. We have to pass and pass very, very well. So at least as for oil and gas, people who don't get the marks, I mostly say that something strange happened on that exams day. Something strange happened on that day. Because even if you study the past questions, you can close your eyes and look at where the trend is going. Unless something drastic changes, something serious changes, then you see that the question will just turn around. And it does happen once in a while. If you have really written exams, okay. I remember those days when we were writing ICA. You go and the question is just, oh, everything is oh, and it is intentional. Sometimes examiner will just do something and turn everything upside down. So in that particular setting, you can see very few people pass. Just like this last year's law entrance exams. The whole thing was just oh, but 1,820 students who wrote, only 128 passed. So those things, you don't blame yourself, understand? Then it appears you are destined to rewrite. But under a normal situation, I really do not expect that you get a deviation in the exams and you don't get the 50 marks. No. So you just have to be careful and tactical, write a paper as a matured second chartering course. You know, this is a second charter. You might have chartered in ACCA or ICA. Those are lower grades. This is the second grade. You are writing with lawyers and everybody. Even if you have a PhD degree, we don't even exempt you in final one. So let's take note and then just be tactical. But following the trend, you should pass. You should really pass. And the things are not many. So if you don't understand something, please shout and let us hear you. Let's assist you with the oil and gas. International taxation, yes, I understand. The things are many, you have to read, and international taxation makes you better in terms of your tax profession. But for oil and gas, yeah, it's just copy and cut, copycat, then we are moving forward. Is that okay? So I sent some questions. I believe that we can read it just to revise and see how far we are going. We've done them already, but I want to understand if a question comes of that sort, will you be able to answer it? So if you can see my screen and you have also seen it on the page, let's read it and let me hear some few contributions. Nicholas, are you asking a question? Nicholas, it's either your earpiece, you need to change it, because anytime you are talking, your earpiece is not too sounding great. So watch it and let's see. Okay, but let's hear you. Were you asking a question? Okay, if you're not asking a question, let's look at, I posted 2 questions there. We have done them already, but I want to see how you would answer it. So can we have a reader? Mary Ganza, you read question 1 for us, and Anne will read question 2 for us. So Mary Ganza will read question 1, and then let's see how we'll discuss it.
Okay, so question 1. Oil gas question for discussion, question 1. Since the discovery of oil and gas producing countries can choose to administer the taxation of oil and gas revenues in different ways and model their tax provisions to restrict certain aspects of cost deduction with a significant impact upon the taxation of oil and gas companies' profits and government tax revenues. In this regard, ring fencing provisions are among the ways in which countries may choose to model the tax treatment of revenues in order to limit specific tax deductions for the oil and gas companies. You are required to 1. Explain the concept of ring fencing in oil and gas physical arrangements and how the scope may differ.
So you can teach today. Okay. Yeah.
Voice so.
Okay. Right. That's fine. Yeah.
Hello, Francis.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here. I'm listening. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was having some feedback. No, I'm not done. So the requirement is that explain the concept of ring fencing in oil and gas physical arrangements and how the scope may differ, and discuss the impacts and reasons and challenges of ring fencing on the taxation of both the oil and gas company and the oil producing state.
You see,
yeah.
I intentionally took this question to another level. You notice that this question has been asked before. Read February 2019, question 2.
February 2019, question 2.
Yeah.
February 2019, question 2 and 4, 2. Okay. February 2019, question 2. Okay. So it says, explain briefly the concept of ring fencing and state how it is provided for in respect of petroleum operations under the Petroleum Income Tax Act 1987, PNDC Law 188, and the Income Tax Act 2015 Act 896. And B, write short notes on unitization and redetermination, 20 marks.
So we did unitization and redetermination the last time, but this ring fencing is the same question that I've taken it further. This time, I want you to discuss the challenges and the impact of ring fencing. When we were dealing with the special industries, when we started reading section 63, and I explained to you that the essence of section 63 is that we have some special industries in Ghana. And in the Income Tax Act, we had to bring all those special industries under one part so that we can analyze it. So if you look at from section 63 to I think section 100, it deals with special classes of companies. Section 63 to 76 deals with what? Oil. It deals with petroleum. Can you see it? Who has the act?
Which of the acts?
You have the act, eh? Mr. Imanolado, do you have the act?
Is it 896?
Yes, 896.
Okay, so 63.
What is the heading? The heading says for part what?
A moment. I'm looking for it.
Part 4.
So you see,
part 6 rather.
Oh, is it 6? Part 6. Then we say special industries. So these industries are special. So from section 63 to 76, we deal with what? Petroleum. Is that not it?
Yeah.
And then 77 to what? 86. This with what?
77. Minerals and minerals operations.
Good. So minerals.
Principles of taxation.
Minerals operations. So this one we talk about the mining, the Anglo Gold and all those things. So these are the law. If you are taxing them, these are the law that you use as a tax expert. So tomorrow, if you get a job at GRA and they say they are sending you to Newmont Ghana Limited, you should be familiar with section 77 to 86. What does the law say? And then from 87 to 88 deals with what?
Come again from where? What to 88?
87 and 88.
Financial institutions.
Good. Financial institutions.
Yeah.
So, assuming that we take you to Barclays Bank, financial institution, we expect you to know something about that. Then 89 to 92 deals with what?
General insurance business.
Insurance. No, deals insurance.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Then
Yeah.
93 to 96 deals with what?
92 to 96.
Pensions or retirement fund.
Yeah.
Retirement savings.
Retirement savings. So this
Yeah.
one, this with provident fund and everything. So you see, these are special classes of entities. We don't treat them as the sale of purchase and sale and all those things. Then from 97 to 100, this with what?
Charitable organizations.
Charitable organizations. So churches and all those ones. I believe that you've done those things in your other stuff. So we have charitable organizations and building society and all those stuff. They are under charitable organization. So you see how the law has been arranged. Now, in these special industries, for as far as we are concerned, for oil and gas, we are going to deal with only these two: petroleum and what? Mining operations. So all this while, the discussion has been on what? Petroleum operation. Next week, I'm going to switch into mining. Then we are done with oil and gas. So under petroleum, we have done well by discussing all this, the revenues from petroleum, oil and gas. How do we manage the petroleum revenue? How is PIAC and all those reports and everything that we have been discussing. Our mind has been occupied with the taxation of special industries. I hope you are okay with up to this point. So very soon, when I shift, then I'm going to consider the other second leg of the special industry, which is mining. And are you okay? Emmanuel, are you okay? Are you fine?
Yeah, this is Anna. I am not too fine, but I think I'll be fine if I could get the previous
Why are you
slide.
not fine? Okay, tell us, why are you not fine?
I am not fine because most of the things that you are mentioning, I haven't really covered that area.
Don't worry, because you joined late. But you have a turbojet. You have a turbojet engine. When you start, you will surpass everybody. You surpass Swala and everybody. So please.
No, Swala would rather have to help me.
Swala. So you have to help her, meet on WhatsApp and other things. Then you move together. But it's not difficult at all.
So Francis,
yeah.
Francis, please, I would appreciate if you could send me the previous slide so that I would follow the presentation.
Don't worry, I'll share with you.
Okay, thank you.
So that is how we
Francis,
yes.
sorry. Talking about the previous slides, how do we access the recordings that you have put on the page?
Oh, you just click on it. It's a YouTube page.
You
just click on it and start listening.
Oh, okay.
Francis, I tried it, but it looks like when I click on it, it tells me, it gives me a feedback.
Oh, there is just a connection. It's just like you are watching YouTube, so just go there and watch it.
Okay, I'll try it again.
So I have not shifted to mining yet, so let's consider this question and see if we can answer it very well. So this is a ring fencing question, but the discussion, I want you to take it further. In the February 2019 question, we were told to explain the concept of ring fencing and say how it is provided for in the Petroleum Income Tax Act, both the PNDC Law 188 and then the Income Tax Act. Let me explain again for the sake of those who joined. PNDC Law 188 and then the Income Tax Act 896. I'm just familiar. The reason why the special industry was created was that we were making a new law and we were calling it income tax. So if it is income tax, then it must contain everything income tax. Did you get it? So we went into PNDC Law 188 and lifted the tax provisions under that portion. Before, we had the Internal Revenue Act. The Internal Revenue Act contained taxation provisions. But this time, we don't have GRA Act. We have the Income Tax Act. So if it is Income Tax Act, then you have to try as much as possible to have all your income tax provisions in it. So when we did the Income Tax Act in 2015, a portion of the PNDC Law 188 was lifted and placed under Section 63 to 70 with some modifications. Unfortunately, we should have repealed that PNDC Law 188, but I didn't repeal it. Because if you make a law and you don't repeal it, it's still a law. So that law is still available. So if you go there, you will notice that it has similar provisions, just like you are going to have under Section 63 to 76. So then don't get confused. I will send you that PNDC Law 188. It's just a small sheet B, small. So just read through. But even if you have read 896, you notice that you are just reading the same things. Okay. So here he's asking how we have provided for ring fencing in 896. So you can just read any 896 and I believe that you will be fine with it. Okay. So let's look at the solution. Read it for me. And Rosemary, am I online?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm looking for the solution.
Yeah, so look at page 148.
Okay. So it says that in taxation, ring fence refers to the segregation of the operations of a company into separate income streams for tax purposes. The International Monetary Fund defines it as limitation on consolidation of income and deductions for tax purposes according to different activities or different projects undertaken by the same taxpayer. The purpose of ring fencing is to put in place law or measures to prevent consolidation of income and deduction across different projects belonging to the same person, so as to ensure that each project pays its share of tax. Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay. Under PNDC Law 188, each contract area of a petroleum agreement is ring-fenced for tax purposes. Where a person has interest in 2 or more petroleum agreements, the taxable income is determined separately for each petroleum agreement, cost and revenue from one petroleum agreement is not permitted to be transferred to another petroleum agreement or consolidated for tax purposes. The ring fence concept is provided under Act 896, and it is termed separate petroleum operations. Two levels of ring fencing in Act 896. 1. Contract level. Petroleum operations conducted under a petroleum agreement constitutes a separate petroleum operation. Where a person has interest in two or more petroleum agreements, petroleum operations in respect of each petroleum agreement constitutes a separate petroleum operation. Field level. Petroleum operations conducted with respect to each development and production area, that is into bracket field, within a contract area of a petroleum agreement constitutes a separate petroleum operation. Where a person is conducting petroleum operations in two or more fields within a contract area, petroleum operations conducted in each field constitute a separate petroleum operation. Petroleum operations conducted in fields of a contract area are delineated as follows. Petroleum operations conducted prior to the date of approval of a plan of development with respect to a field and after approval of a plan of development in relation to the same field is conducted in respect of the same separate petroleum operation. Petroleum operations conducted after the date of approval of the plan of the development, but not in respect of the same field, is considered as conducted in respect of a different separate petroleum operations. The following applies to separate petroleum operations. 1. Each separate petroleum operation is to be treated as a separate business, and assessable income is calculated for each separate petroleum operation. 2. Transactions between different separate petroleum operations of the same person and other activities of the person are required to be conducted on arm's length basis. 3. Transfers of an asset to and from a separate petroleum operations is required to be treated as acquisition and disposal of an asset. 4, and the final one, capital allowances for assets used in two separate petroleum operations in a year are required to be apportioned in proportion to the usage of the assets in each separate petroleum operation.
So,
and
that is the concept of ring fencing. You see, when you are dealing with petroleum, you get a contract. You have to sign a contract. When you sign the contract, you go to the field and explore for oil. In your exploration, you may discover oil. When you discover, then you need to develop. So the stages where you sign your contract, signature of contract. Sometimes you pay what we call the signature bonus. You remember signature bonus? When you pay signature bonus, you go into exploration. So you may be given the whole area to explore for oil. When you explore and you discover in commercial quantity, then you go into development. You submit your development plan to the authority, the government, they will approve it. Then when you finish with the development of the well, then you go into production. Okay, so the ring fencing concept is such that don't consolidate either agreements or what we call the contract area. or don't consolidate wells, fields. So this is Cape 3 Point. This is the well. We have discovered oil here. Then we can also have mahogany. This is also another well. So the ring fencing concept is saying that treat these entities as two separate, treat these wells as if they are two separate entities for tax purposes. It's purely for tax purposes. And there's a reason why we do that. Okay, there's a reason why. And if you treat it that way, this well will pay tax. This well will also pay tax. Though they are all owned by, let's say, Talo. Please, do you get it?
Yeah, we are following.
Alternatively, so this one is governed by one contract area. So this one is the agreement you sign for the Western region by Talo and Ghana GMPC. So this is signed by it. Okay, so this is, you see the ring fencing. We are trying to say ring fence this one from this one, so that if you make a loss here, you cannot consolidate it with a profit here. So this one will pay his own taxes, and then this one will also pay his own taxes. Where there is a joint usage of an asset, when we calculate the capital allowance, for which I believe that you are now an expert in the calculation of capital allowance, though we'll go over it when I finish with the mining, is that when there's a joint use of an asset, we have to apportion it. You remember when we're dealing with the test schedule, you need to apportion it between the two wells. So this is a field ring fencing. Alternatively, you can have two agreements. This is in the Western region. And this is in what? The Volta Basin. So this agreement was signed by Talo and Ghana government, and again by Talo and Ghana government, but they are two separate agreements. Do you get it? So this is the other ring fencing that we are talking about. Again, we are saying that if you have such an arrangement, Volta Basin will determine its accessible income and profit separately. So they make a profit here, pay the taxes. They make a profit here, pay the taxes. If there's a loss here, the fact that they all belong to Talo does not mean that you say production A, production B, total production, then you determine the taxes. No, we don't do that. So we have the contract level ring fencing. So this one is contract. And then we have the field level ring fencing. Field level is determined by the wells, okay, the projects. Please, are you okay with this one? And we will come and read section 64. Is it 64 or 63? Look at 63 LMC. And the term that we Ghana we use is separate petroleum operations. Separate petroleum operations. Please look at section 63 for me. What does it say? Fred. Sorry, 64. Look at 64. 64. That is the term we use for it. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Read it. Let me see. We'll read the heading for us.
It says separate petroleum operations. Subject to subsection 2. a petroleum operation pertaining to a petroleum right shall constitute a separate petroleum operation. That's the one.
Good. So in Ghana, we use the concept of separate petroleum operations. In some other jurisdictions, they don't. And this concept affects what we'll be looking at later in the question 2. So the question 1, I wanted you to discuss this concept, but take it further. It said in this regard, ring fencing provisions are among the ways in which countries may choose to model the tax treatment of revenues in order to limit specific tax deductions for the oil and gas companies. So here, we are trying to limit your deductions. It's the same company, but we are saying that each operation should be treated as a separate one. We have ring fenced it. If you incur expenses in water basin, please let the expenses remain there. If you incur expenses in Western Cape 3 Point, it is also supposed to be treated as a separate entity or a separate company, though it is one company. And we are doing it just for tax purposes. Please, are you okay? Oh, are you already tired?
Yes, we are fine. We are following.
So Fred, read this for me and let's see how it goes. So let's see if this question is asking a question, how would you have tackled it?
Explain the concept.
Derek.
Yes, sir.
Let's hear you.
I remember, I was going through the past questions and a similar question was asked. But I think that one was with respect to mineral operation.
Yes, mineral operations. We are going to, when we get there, we will also deal with. So the same concept, but because we are within the arena of oil and gas, so we are limiting it to oil and gas. When we switch to the other special industry called mineral operation, we will also discuss the same concept. And in fact, we also have the same concept in insurance. Insurance too, we have ring fencing.
Oh, okay.
For
I understand, but what I want to ask is
Derek, your line is a bit faint, though, so maybe reposition your earpiece.
Okay, please, can you hear me now?
Can everybody hear him? Hello, can everybody hear him? Okay, Derek, proceed.
With that particular question, it was indicated that if a person conducts a mineral operation with respect to two mines with a shared processing facility, and the two mines can be termed to be the same mineral operation. That is the two mines. You say if you conduct mineral operation concerning or with respect to two mines, but with a same or a shared processing facility, then they can constitute the two to be the same mineral operation. Does it apply to the petroleum as well?
No. For petroleum, when there is a shared, and I think she read it somewhere. It said that she read it somewhere where there is a shared. It said each separate petroleum operation is to be treated as separate business, and accessible income is calculated for each separate petroleum operations. Transactions between different separate operations of the same persons and other activities are required to be conducted as transfer of assets or from separate option is supposed to be treated as acquisition and disposal. Okay, so you know what? When we finish with the mining, because we've not tackled mining yet. Mining, we'll come and look at them separate mining operation. Then we can do the comparison. Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
So I'm hoping that next week we should start with the mining. But for now, let's look at the contract level and then the field level operations. But I agree with you. The same concept applies in mining. The concept applies in insurance. Where there's a need for modification, then there's a modification in that. So it appears that almost all the special industries, they have some form of ring fencing provisions in there. Okay, so Fred, read it for us. Be a reader, our newscaster.
Ring fencing provisions impose limitations on deduction for tax purposes across different activities or projects undertaken by the same oil and gas company. It is therefore common for countries to ring fence upstream natural resource operations so that only costs directly attributable to them are taken into account in taxing them. Ring fencing is a special technical issue for natural resource tax administration. This may require contractors or concessionaires to restrict cost recovery or deduction associated with a given area, block or license, or sometimes even a specific field to that project. This means that all costs associated with a particular block or license must be recovered from revenue generated within that same block.
So do you understand this point? What we are saying, the purpose of the ring fencing is that if you are getting revenue from this block, oil block, please let us recover the expenses from that revenue. And it makes sense because in some cases, you notice that a company can have an oil well here and then another oil well here. They will incur so much expenses. You know, oil production is a risk. They will incur so much expenses here. And then by the time they finish drilling, they won't get any oil. When they don't get any oil, and we allow them to come and consolidate block A and block B, you will notice that all the profit here will be wiped away by the losses here. So for him, he can say he has break even. Then government of Ghana will lose because there is what? You know, tax people, they don't normally like setting off losses against profits. I mean, it's not nice because they don't get money. So they don't normally like it. And in oil and gas, because of the risky nature of it, you can go into a whole oil and gas operations and then you make loss, like Talo is making. So they have decided to go to exit Ghana. If we allow the ring fencing to be, abused and they consolidate it, it's the Ghana government which is going to lose. You know, at the time we gave them the decision, we ourselves, we didn't know. So they went into exploration. It's a risk that they are undertaking. So the whole concept is that revenue here, expenses here. Revenue here, expenses here. It's as simple as that. Okay. Continue.
Okay. Where ring fencing applies, by referencing to a contract or license area, companies operating in different contract areas will need to allocate costs between them. But some countries require a separate company to be established for each contract area, which reduces the need to apply ring fencing rules.
Does this one apply in Ghana? Does our law require them to set up separate companies?
No.
Good. So you see, in our case, we don't require you to set up a separate company. That is why we have used the other approach. Okay, so we now go with what? The field, the same company, but we still try to achieve our ring fencing objective by either doing at the field level or what? At the contract level under section 64. Okay, continue.
This approach may be less cumbersome from an administrative viewpoint, but may be inefficient to the oil and gas company investing.
Why?
Is provided under section 64.
No, why do you think it will be inefficient for the company, but it will be it will be less cumbersome for tax administrators? If we allow them to set up separate companies, it will be less cumbersome for the tax authorities. So you discover oil here, we ask you to go and register for a company. You discover another one, you register. Why do you think it will be easy for tax authorities, but it will be difficult for the companies?
It will be easy because, in my opinion, if the companies are set up, I think automatically it will
Derek, we lost you.
I mean, it is
Okay.
Hello.
Maybe I'm sure you've made your point. Yeah, take it again. Take it again.
Hello.
Yes, take it again.
Okay, sir. If companies are established for assuming the various wells or the contract areas, then it is automatically it will address the issues that we have already itemized under the ring fencing concept, okay, where a person will have experience, determine a chargeable income, tax liability, transfer of asset, and all those things. Because now it will improve your report, your tax returns, and everything. Now, it wouldn't be easy for the contractors to consolidate with other.
Okay, I get you. But do you think our current approach of using separate petroleum operations is also difficult? One company, then the tax manager will have to calculate. If you have about 10 operations, then you have to calculate taxes for about 10 of them. So you are the head of tax for Cosmos. Then you have 10 wells, 10 projects, or 20 licenses. Then you have to do tax computation for each of them. Is it not also cumbersome for the tax authorities to deal with each of the operations? Hey.
I think it is going to be cumbersome, and it is going to be a burden on the person. But if it is a separate company, we are assuming that it is going to have different staff, different management to it, even though it is going to be very capital intensive and cost to the contractors. But with the tax authorities, I mean, there are people that are going to be in charge. To be easy to get access to information because people have been assigned to it. But okay, with the normal one that we have, you know, in order to cut costs, I believe that they are going to use
Okay, Derek's line is quite dropping. So, Fred, continue to read for us.
Ring fencing is provided under section 64 at 896. Separate petroleum operations, 64, subsection 1, subject to subsection 2, a petroleum operation pertaining to a petroleum right shall constitute a separate petroleum operation.
Okay.
Subsection 2. The following rules shall apply where a development plan for a petroleum agreement area is approved. A petroleum operation conducted. It has to go up. With respect to the petroleum right before the date of approval of the development plan, and II, with respect to the development and production area after the date of approval of the development plan, shall be treated as conducted with respect to the same separate petroleum operation. And B, from the date of approval of the development plan, a petroleum operation conducted with respect to the petroleum rights that is not in respect of the development and production area shall be considered as a new separate petroleum operation.
I hope you can explain this one when it comes in exams. The rules that apply. We are saying that normally when you discover petroleum, what you have to do is that you send your development plan. How do you intend to develop the discovery? When you send it, okay, any activity that you have done before the plan is approved, because certainly you might have engaged in what? Exploration. Okay, so you might have engaged in exploration, and then you need to explore before you get. So you have an exploration. When you discover in commercial quantity, then you develop it. So it is at this point that you send your development plan. Okay, so everything that has taken place here is before the approval. So you might have incurred exploration costs. So what we are saying here is that anything that you have done before the approval of the plan and anything that you do after approval of the plan is one. We shouldn't consider it as what? Separate petroleum operations. Please, do you understand it? So this is the well, or this is the area. You did exploration here. When you finish, you are going to do development. So this one was pre-approval because you were developing, so nobody approved any. You were exploring, so nobody approved any development plan for you. So job that you have started already, and then job that you continue on after it has been approved, that one we can't call it separate petroleum operation because it's the same work. But where from the date of approval, if you conduct anything which is not part of the approved plan, that one should be considered as what? A separate operation. So assuming that this you have finished with this one, then you move here and you are going to do another exploration. Please, we will see this exploration as what? A new separate operation. And then we will treat it as a separate entity. Then we'll tax you. Please, do you understand it? Emmanuel, Mariganza,
and take that again.
Okay, so we are trying to explain this one.
Sir.
What we are trying to explain is that when you have a petroleum operation, it is in stages. You first have to sign your contract, you go into exploration. When you go into exploration, let's say you have done the exploration, then you have discovered the oil. You need to go into development. Okay, from section 21 of the Act 919, which we have already shared, you need to submit a development plan for approval by the ministry. How do you intend to develop the well? So this one is before approval plan. So all the exploration work that you did, you incur some cost, let's say it's 100 million. Then you come and incur development cost because now your plan has been approved. You want to build 3 wells you want to build 3 rigs, FPSO will be done, blah, blah, blah. That one too is the development cost, 300 million. It has been approved. What we are saying is that the pre-development activities and then the post-development activities, they are all one. It is one petroleum operations. We cannot consider it as separate. But if you finish this petroleum operations, which has been approved, and you discover another oil somewhere, okay, if you discover another oil somewhere, this one should not be counted as part of this one. And so this one will be separate petroleum operation. This will also be separate petroleum operation. So we are now ring fencing the two. Please, do you understand it now?
Yes.
Okay. So now continue, Fred. Yes.
Ring fencing can be applied on different scopes. Some countries ring fence their oil and gas activities from other commercial activities performed by the same entity, to bracket as downstream operations in the country.
Do you think it applies in Ghana? Should it apply? Or did our law consider this? So you extract exploration and development and production. Then downstream, you are doing downstream. Downstream is the OMCs. Should we separate them, or we should? Do you think it's one, or it's separate? So tallow is in upstream because they are producing. Then they produce, and then they get the oil, petrol. Then we have, instead of Total and all those things, we have tallow oil, also as an oil marketing company. Should we treat it as a separate? Should we ring fence it? Hello? Hey.
Hello, we are here.
Are you following, or you are tired?
We are here.
We are here.
I'm saying that assuming Total or Shell goes and acquire license to produce oil. When they produce oil, just like tallow and coal, should we ring fence their filling stations from the operations?
Yes, I think so. I think so, because for purposes what we are discussing, I think for tax people to be able to treat it as separate income stream or businesses for purposes of taxation, they should be treated as separate entities.
Okay. All right. Great. Fred, continue. You are here, Fred.
Some countries ring fence their oil and gas activities from other commercial activities performed by the same entity to back up downstream operations in the country, whilst others ring fence individual projects from other projects held by the same oil and gas company. The ring fencing provision may apply to individual licenses or on a field-by-field basis. In a ring fencing situation, exploration expenses in one non-producing block may not be deducted against income another block for the purpose of
income from another block.
Income from another block for the purpose of tax calculation and assessment. Under production sharing contract, as a general rule, ring fencing provision acts in the same way, where costs incurred in one ring fence block cannot be recovered from another block outside the ring fence area. Implementing ring fence provisions in the tax regime. Is it full stop or there's outside the ring fence area? Implementing ring fencing provisions in the tax regimes applicable to oil and gas companies could lead to a higher tax.
Do you agree?
overall oil and gas revenues.
Do you agree? Do you agree with this statement? That ring fencing leads to a higher tax. Derek, Francis, Nicholas, do you agree that ring fencing increases taxes?
I agree.
Yes. Yes.
Francis, yes, it can lead to higher tax.
Why?
Because you are not allowed to carry.
Will you recommend that Ghana changes the ring fencing? Because the oil companies are suffering.
Well, this week I saw hello.
Yes.
Yes, this week I think I saw the companies also requesting them to take a look at some of this for them. But I think it's as to whether I recommend that the government changes some of this, is how government will take a look at the businesses of the company. Because if you are not careful, they may use a different business altogether to offset some of the profit gain from the oil and gas.
You are right. The whole thing is that I just came to get a license to do license in this area. Then I discover oil here, and I discover another here. I discover another here. I may make a loss here. Okay, it's just like you are selling products. You are selling milk. You are selling gari. You are selling another thing. So whereas you make profits in one area, if you put the whole combined business together, you should be able to, balance off. But government is saying that no, this block is to be treated as from this one. So even if you make a total loss in this area, you are not allowed to offset it against another area. But I got one contract. So if the government does not get you at the contract level to ring fence, he will get you at the field level to ring fence. And that's why we are making the argument that it is a dangerous thing because it increases the overall tax payable by the companies. Imagine you are selling different product lines and you make loss in one area. At least the loss should be compensated by profit in another area. But government said, no, ring fence. That's what we're talking about. Continue. Fred, continue.
Reasons
Nicholas,
and
mute your
challenges.
mic. Continue.
Reasons and challenges. Allowing companies to offset those costs.
Hey, Fred, you jump.
Yes.
Did you read this one?
Okay. If a company operates in several ring-fence areas, it is required to calculate profit separately for each of the ring-fence areas and may not consolidate the cost for tax purposes. However, if all the projects held by the company are successful and economically profitable, it should only constitute the timing difference issue, as the cost will still be recovered, but this will happen later on the project in case ring fencing applies. Reasons and challenges. Allowing companies to offset those costs might give an advantage to existing industry players over new entrants with only one license. For oil and gas producing countries, these rules have an impact because the absence of ring fencing limitations can postpone government tax receipts as the company that undertakes a series of projects is able to deduct exploration and development costs from each new project against the income of projects that are already generating revenue and taxable income.
Do you understand this point? We are saying that if we allow them to, if we don't have ring fencing, what will happen? When they come and they make a loss, they will just deduct it from the profit that they have already made. So we are like insuring their operations. Oh, come, if you make a loss, you can deduct it against the profitable one already existing. So no fears. So that is the essence of ring fencing. We can't insure their operations. So is that they don't lose.
And Francis, I think I need to say that these oil companies, if you don't ring fence them, they can incur certain expenditures that always make them incur losses.
Yes.
And they know how to do it.
Mm.
Because they use specialized equipment and they can price it such a way that they will never make profits.
Meanwhile, they are buying the equipment from their parent companies, isn't it?
Yes.
So we are saying that if you price it higher, come again. Okay, Fred, continue.
Sorry, I was saying that the equipment that they use for other exploration, some of them are some are specialized that you cannot use different companies equipment for years. So they always should the original equipment manufacturers. And when they do that, their prices are always high.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, Fred, continue. Fred.
But this way, by introducing ring fence provisions, government revenues arising from tax receipts can be accelerated. If no ring fencing applies, this will potentially reduce to bracket the higher taxes intended to be collected from those projects. Additionally, if there are no ring fencing provisions in place and different tax regimes apply to different areas, companies could allocate costs disproportionately to higher tax areas to reduce their tax assessments. One other aspect is that where countries impose progressive taxes, area ring fencing provisions can mean companies pay higher taxes on excess profit from one area, even though they have not made excess profit or have even suffered a loss in the jurisdiction considered as a whole.
Ring fence provisions can.
It's not going up. That's why I thought I finished.
Yeah.
Ring fencing provision can add significant administrative complexity and risk, particularly when licensed areas or even individual projects are ring fenced, as it is the case in many countries. Also, ring fencing may hamper companies undertaking further exploration and development activities due to the inability to claim deduction for such activities on existing projects. It may also encourage tax planning if the ring fence tax regime is more onerous than the standard tax regime. For example, locating lower tax downstream activities outside the ring fence, including in another jurisdiction, or transfer pricing to shift profit outside the ring fence or cost inside the ring fence.
So you see, it will encourage tax planning, and they can use transfer pricing to shift one asset to the other. And that is why we read somewhere under section 64. Was it 64? Someone read it for us, that we should apply transfer pricing rules when we are dealing with ring fence operations. So that is how I was expecting you to answer the question. So now you understand the ring fencing. Can you answer all questions under ring fencing? Ready?
Right.
Ready? Any question?
No, not really. Not
Are
really.
you sure?
I think I understand the whole concept of ring fencing. Like, not really details, but then I have a fair idea of what ring fencing and its challenges is. So it's better. I think learning would make it more better.
Raymond. Hey, Raymond, are you cooking? Do you understand ring fencing now?
I get it. I understand. I could be further reading.
So please, can I ask a question?
You can ask.
Okay. So my question is that looking at what we've learned so far concerning the rig fencing, don't you think it will be unattractive for, let's say, investors who want to come and invest in the oil and gas sector?
Yes, that is one argument you can make. There's a reason. So that's why we look at the advantages of the ring fencing, the disadvantages of the ring fencing. So the advantages to the government, and then whilst it's an advantage to the government, it is also a disadvantage to the government. So I'm expecting that whilst you have read about ring fencing provision, you release some article, Ghana's ring fencing provisions, a barrier to investment in the oil and gas industry. Article by Nicholas Boaben, CIT, final one. So are you going to release it? Nicholas,
I'll try.
Oh, you have been trying. I've been waiting for articles from some of you for a very long time. I mean, it's a nice thing to talk about. So then you bring the argument for why countries try to adopt ring fencing, and then you explain. So you can take one position. Then you look at the disadvantages to the companies. That is a disadvantage. That I have one. I'm one company. I'm investing. You can take it like I'm selling products. Well 1, well 2, well 3, well 4. Government says that if I make a loss here, I cannot be compensated on the other one. So I'm on my own, especially for new projects. So it will discourage people from conducting further exploration. So the profit that you made from this company, if you go and use it on a project which you don't get revenue, you have lost it, because you cannot offset that expenses from the existing profits of a similar project. If you go and use money on that project, you should do your best to get money from that project to offset it against the cost. Else, the cost is a sunk cost. And that's the concept of ring fencing. Okay, let's look at question 2. Our time is up, but let's look at the question 2. Then you go and discuss it. We've done question 2 also. Guys, if this thing had come in exam, would you have been able to address it properly? Nicholas, would you have been able to address it properly? I just want to be sure. I don't want any mistakes in the exam. So, Swala, would you have been able to justify your inclusion? Hey, is Swala going to pray? Swala. Hey, Swala is not listening. Okay, Rosalind, I know you are preparing food, but would you have been able to justify it? I see all those who are far away. It means that they are cooking and listening into the lecture. Okay, Mr. Ado, would you have been able to justify it? Ima. Hello, Imano. Would you have been able to justify it? Okay. Fred, read the second question for us. Then we'll go and try it at home. What does the question say?
Francis. Accounting practice defines decommissioning as the process of plugging and abandoning wells, dismantlement of wellhead, production and transport facilities, and restoration of producing areas in accordance with license requirements and relevant legislation. You are required to 1. Discuss various ways in which decommissioning costs may be treated in relation to the taxation of oil and gas activities. 2, discuss when a provision may be deducted.
No, I should not. This place should not be different ways. Discuss the ways.
Discuss the ways. Okay.
A way, isn't it? Francis, you wanted to ask a question.
I wanted to comment on the question that you asked, whether you could. So we have the answers we provided here is very exhaustive, and I was just saying that in the exams definitely we would have written something, probably not to this extent, because this is very. So this one we have to read it and pick the points again and then answer, because this is quite lengthy and.
Okay.
For exams that we are writing 5 papers in 3 hours. So sometimes it makes me wonder if consideration is given to students who make good attempt in answering questions beyond because the time and the number of questions may not give us the chance to write exhaustively as we have discussed here.
Yes, I agree. In exams, we don't expect you to write lengthy. So mostly we give some of these solutions so that it will help you to guide your studies. Okay, so I'm going to give it to you as a homework. This one, accounting. Okay. So this one is a decommissioning. You need to read about the decommissioning, and I think section 69, and solve it for me. Agreed. Hello.
Yes, I agreed.
Okay. So when do we get it? Rosalind, give us the date that we should expect. Okay, Rosemary, when should we submit it?
I think I agree with the.
So when are we submitting it? The question 2. You are reading about decommissioning. So when are we submitting?
Okay, Francis.
Yeah. Can we submit it on Wednesday?
Okay, try.
All right. So next week we will be dealing with the mining. Please try and get your mining act ready. The mining act. When we next week we are going to do another major question. Like I said, we have done practice what is in the past questions. One question is on the oil and gas. There's going to be another calculation, which is on the mining. So as you go to the exams, or you know that these are what I'm going to answer. So one calculation on oil and gas, then there will be 3 other written questions. And 3 written questions, we have been discussing so many of them. Certainly you get 1 or 2 questions from the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So you should master the various funds, how the disbursements are done, and all those stuff. Then you can get questions like maybe this ring fencing and all those stuff. What is separate petroleum operations and all those stuff. You can get questions from maybe determination, redetermination, and all this other concepts. Then you get your last question, which is the calculations on the mining. Then you are done. So I believe that next week when we start, we'll look at the theories and then the law. Then we'll find another week to finish the calculation. Then I think we will just spend some time reviewing the past questions and other areas. So let's stick to that, and then next week when we meet, and then we'll continue. Any question?
Francis, this is a general question.
Okay.
With the and I've been reading the question and answer books. So that most of the time the answers provided are based on the marking scheme. That's normally what I see.
Yes.
In the exam, is there a particular expectation in terms of how you shall approach the question by introduction of the answers?
Not really, but be guided by the mode of the answer, because we mark according to the marking scheme. So just be guided by how the marking scheme has been framed. You cannot reproduce it in exams. At least it should give you a fair idea of what we want.
Okay.
You're not supposed to reproduce everything, but at least if I read your script and I read the marking scheme, I should be able to pick something which is in the marking scheme. I mean, I should be able to relate it, and I'll mark you.
I see.
I mean, oil and gas is not difficult. It's not a difficult paper. So that's solving the questions, and then let's see how it goes. Okay.